Hello. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Got just a couple of minutes here before we kind of officially get started, but figure it's good to start talking just to make sure everyone can hear me all right before we get rolling. So. All right, so it's 9 o'clock here, a little bit earlier than we have running them, so we'll get started here, but not too quickly to let anyone else filter in here. So got just a couple of housekeeping items. Number one, thanks for joining this morning, or whatever time it might be where you're at. We've got the chat feature that I'm going to type a chat in here. This is the best place to put the any questions you may have. So I'm just putting in a sentence there in case it wasn't already popped up on your screen. That's the best place to throw a question at me. If we're moving too quickly, if you want to know something a little bit more about something you saw on the screen, that's worked for us very well in our past webinars we've done. Normally I'll see them. It catches out of the corner of my eye. I'll see the chat move and can handle it there. If I miss it, I keep trying to every so often look over there and cover anything that came in. So. And then of course at the end too, usually if we've got some time, kind of open it up too if there's questions at the end. And we are also recording this session as we have all of our past webinars. So if you want to refer back to this or have like a coworker that wanted to join but couldn't, we are recording now and we'll post it on our website. So just to show you where that's at, we got out on our homepage, gdmdata.com. Under the resources heading, there's training, and that's this page right here. Kind of shows our webinars we've got planned out this week, and there's a link to the previous recordings. And so this is kind of our archives, as we've done a fair number now the last few weeks, and we're just going to continue to build up this archives here. And so if there was one you want to check out from before, or you just want to refer back to this one, we'll get this one posted here either later today or maybe tomorrow by the time it gets posted. So. All right, well with that, I think we'll dive in. Today's subject is attaching images to plots in ARM. So if you're taking plot photos, of your, your assessments. It could either be at assessment time, when you have recorded a set of values, and you also took a picture, kind of at that point in time to document, or just to be able to visually refer back to. You can attach an image to each of these data points. So a data point ARM there, when you have entered a value, there's actually a few other pieces of information that you can save with that value. And you'll find those on the properties panel. About halfway down here, there's this assessment section. And so there is a text comment that you can put in that belongs just to that value if there was something you wanted to note. There's a barcode you could enter. There are GPS coordinates you could fill in for that plot. You can mark it as damaged, which will basically toss it from the analysis, although it will keep your data value there. And then this last portion is what we're talking about today, attaching an image. And so you can actually link a photograph file to that plot. And you'll see once you have any of those pieces of information entered, there'll be a little red triangle that pops up. And that's just kind of an indication that there's something more there than just that 18. In this case, there's a comment, and I'll just clear that out here, and we'll see those triangles reappear when we attach our images. So that's kind of what we're going to show today. Whether you have them for each individual value, or if you wanted to, you could simply just have an empty data column that is just your plot pictures. If it's really a one-time thing or something, you wouldn't necessarily even have to have them linked with a assessment value. You can do whatever you'd like, really. This process will fit the same whether you've got data or you just wanted a blank column to link up all of your pictures. All right, so I'm going to run through this process twice today. The first time going somewhat quickly, just to kind of show you the overarching process of what we'll do and what we achieve. And then I'll go back and we'll do it again, and we'll talk about more of the options. Hopefully that way we kind of can see the end result, and then when we're talking about all the different options, maybe it'll make more sense since we've seen it once. So first time through, I'm going to click on my first cell that I want to link up an image to. And then here on that properties panel, we'll click the attach button underneath that image label there. So now ARM is going to ask me to go choose where my image file is at. And so I have on my desktop a folder here that I'm running from, and I've got a whole bunch of pictures here of soybeans, as it were. So what you can do is you can attach a single image to that plot, or if you want, I've got all of these pictures kind of line up with all of my plots in my trial. You can actually choose multiple. So I'm going to grab all of my images. And how I did that here, I used my keyboard, which you can't see. I clicked this first one and then went down to the bottom, and I held my shift key and then clicked that last one. And the shift will do kind of a multi-select and grab everything between the first and the last, in this case, from where I clicked. All right. So now ARM finds all of those images and starts to line up my plots with those images in the order that I chose them. So I could pick and pop if I wanted to. And so I actually picked enough images that it actually covered all of my plots twice. So we kind of overflowed, and once we got done with the first column, well, let's just start attaching to the second column. So that sounds just great. There's a lot of options here to control what the order that this goes into, and we'll demonstrate those later. Kind of the biggest time saver here is the second half, where you get to choose how the image is named. So essentially, ARM is going to take those images that I had in that soybeans folder, and it can copy those images to the folder where my trial is at. So that way we're not messing with the original photos. You'll still have those in the place that you saved them, but it will copy them to the folder where your trial is at. When it does that copy, it'll also rename the image files. and you can customize how those images files are saved. So here I've got my trial ID, then it's got the plot number, treatment number, and the assessment date. So that looks just fine for right now. So now when I say okay, you can see all these little red triangles appeared, and when you're clicking into a cell, now there's a little thumbnail. So we have attached all of those images I chose to all of these plots in the assessment data here. Now, if I click to each plot, you'll see the appropriate picture loads according to how we attached it on that dialog. Now, what happens here, and you'll notice I keep using the word attach. We aren't actually importing the image and embedding it in the trial file. So our trial file didn't all of a sudden get really huge, and we've got this massive file. What's actually happened is if we go to the attachments editor, we've really just defined a link. So we've really just linked to the location where we just copied those images to the folder where the trial is at. So now this link is going to be wherever my trial file is saved, which is on my desktop as well. Actually, here, let's just show that folder I have off screen. Here's where my trial is at, and this is where my original pictures were. And you'll notice the names weren't particularly helpful. Now they copied all those files and they have placed them into the folder where my trial is at. And now it's got all of those there named something actually helpful. And that was all done automatically. And so here in that trial, the trial is still quite small. If we look at the properties here, it's still not even close to a megabyte in size. And we really just have these links. So it's just a reference to this file and this file and this file here, linked up here in the attachments. That's really all ARM is going to do to manage that. And then it just simply goes out to find that file to show us what's actually linked there. So it's just good to note that these pictures aren't actually in the trial file themselves. If you were to send this trial to somebody else, be sure to include those images as well. Those image files you want to bring along too, so that way they can see those images. And you can do that with the send to function is very nice for that as well, because ARM will automatically go out and grab all of those image files along with the trial and put it all in the same folder and then create an email message for you. So a good plug to use that utility. So that's the the really abridged version of what we're trying to achieve here. It's really nice to be able to then see those images with the plots, and I think it's a huge time saver for renaming the images too, to be able to have something valuable to the image name as opposed to those the stock file that your camera may take and save the files to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this trial and open it again, just to kind of discard these changes. And we'll do this all one more time and dive into the nitpicky little options so you can see how you can customize this and make sure it works with your workflow. So when I do that, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to save changes to my trial because we're just going to do this all over again. And then ARM is going to warn me that, hey, we attached all these images, but you're trying not to save any of your changes. So what should I do with all of those images here in this folder that I copied? So ARM is going to help me out and clear those out. This is probably not a dialog you'll ever see unless you try to attach images and don't like how it worked and you just kind of wanted to cancel and start again. Then you would want to say yes. Otherwise, this is just kind of warning you that, hey, maybe you really should save those changes and you want to cancel. If I say no, what's going to happen is we'll close the trial, no changes are saved, but all of these picture files will still remain here and named this way as well. So I'm going to say yes, I want to get rid of those image attachments because I'm going to reattach from the originals. So And just to visually confirm, they're all gone. I've still got my originals intact because we really aren't messing with the originals. Those are all copied. It's just those ones that ARM had newly created by copying them in. All right, so starting from scratch again, we'll go a little bit slower through this process and talk about all the options here. So let's click attach again. And so as I mentioned, the order that you choose matters. So if you wanted to pick those 4, and then these look like they're slightly different, and then go to this 4, you know, the order that you're choosing the images in will be the order that ARM loads them up on that next screen that we had saw. So kind of depending on the order that you took your photos in, you can kind of customize that as to the order that you're picking. Chances are there's probably kind of a logical order that you took your pictures in. And so I would recommend probably more likely using this approach with the shift and grabbing them all in the order that you took them would be sufficient. Because we're going to step through this next dialog where you can make sure ARM sorts them right, which is probably a lot easier than you hand picking to get the order to match what ARM originally gives you. So if we open those there in the order that I took them, now you'll see at the top here, this left-hand side, these 2 sets of options really control the order that these are going to be attached in. So right now, it looks like we're sorted in treatment order because we have treatment number 1, then 2, 3, 4. So the plot numbers are kind of all over the board. And that's because we've chosen the sort order as treatment. So if you instead took the pictures kind of as you did your assessments, and so that would be in your assessment order, maybe typically you would serpentine, so you do 101, 102, 103. Once you get to the end down to 10, I guess in this case it'd be 104, then you'd hop to the next row and work your way back. So then you go 104 up to 204, 203, 202, and work your way back. So you can customize that on the trial map editor. You can choose what order the assessment order is. And so here now you can see that's my order. Actually, it looks like my trial map might be shaped a little strangely because I go from 101, you know, the 100s to the 400s, and then 500s, 200s, 300s. But that's kind of whatever order you have set on the trial map, that's the sort order. You know, that's your assessment sort order, and then there's also a harvest sort order. So that's kind of choosing how these plots are sorted. And you could also just sort by plot if you wanted to just go straight down the number system there, because that's how you took your photos. So you can see as we change these options, the images kind of stay where they're at. They stay in that same order we had chosen them. And ARM is just changing the order of the plots so that way we can get these to line up with truly what the picture was. You can also choose the direction that these photos were in. So right now it's by column across plot. So this was the first picture we had chosen. This was the second picture. This was the third. And it's going to go down the column. And then since we ran, you know, since we still have some more pictures, it'll just start in with the next column and continue to go down the column. Alternatively, you could go across columns. So I'm bumping that up to 2. So now this was the first picture we chose. The second one is going to be at the same plot, just in your next column. And then we'll go back to starting with column 1 for plot 102, and then go this way. So we're kind of weaving through there. You could even do 3 columns if you want, you know, however many columns you want to attach. It's going to just kind of go in that order and fill in at the same plot. It's going to keep filling in the pictures you took until you get to the end of the number of columns, and that's going to start at the next plot. Maybe I'll go down to 2 because that fills. We have 2 columns worth of plots there, so you can see then that's kind of snakes our way through, if you will. And then you can set that plot order. So between those two, of kind of how many columns you would fill in, and how many the order that your plots are, you can really make ARM be set to the order that you took those pictures. So that would be my recommendation, instead of the previous step having to hand choose the order that you picked. Just kind of grab them all in the order that you took them and get ARM smarts to sort and be able to accept it in that order that you took them. Finally, you can also actually attach more than one image to a single plot. So let me switch to the by column. So we're just going straight down. Then change that to 2. Now we're only attaching, we only have enough images for one column, because you'll see 101 is actually getting 2 different images. And the 102 gets 2 images. So you can also attach more than one image to a single cell in the assessment editor if you wish. I think in our case, I will keep it simple, and we'll just go with one image per plot. And we'll go down and then start with the next column. These other options here, as we said, customize what ARM does with those image files. And if you want, you don't have to copy them to the folder where your trial is at. If you do this and keep the rename image, then wherever those images are that you picked, which here I have in my soybeans folder here, all of these files will be renamed. So those are the original files that you took. Those will be renamed. Technically, you wouldn't even have to rename them at all if you didn't want, if they were already named appropriately, or you just don't want to rename them. ARM can certainly still link up to those image files the way they're already named. And these file name components, so you can kind of customize what gets included in the file name, and actually even the order too. So here you've got the trial ID and then the plot number, but maybe you want the plot number lower. So you can just change the number here, and as I change this, you'll notice this little preview changes. So here we move the plot. I'm going to go from 3 up to 2. It'll be the second component, so it's going to jump ahead of the treatment number. Oops. So now it is the second component. So here is our trial ID for this trial, and then the plot number gets to be next, and then the treatment number, and then the assessment date. If you had subsamples, you can also have a subsample number. Here I don't have it, so it really wouldn't be useful, because everything is going to be subsample number 1. The column ID, this isn't quite the column number. It might not necessarily be the number here that you see, the column number, and that's because if I later right click and insert a new column next to column 1, well then this column with the data is actually going to be column number 2. So the numbers there for ARM columns could in theory change over time if you're inserting columns. But ARM does have kind of an internal column number identifier that it keeps track of. So no matter what type of, no matter how many columns you might rearrange or insert, there's still a way to know that this is still that very same column. And so that's the column ID number. And you don't see it in ARM anywhere, but it will show up here then in the image name. And really the reason you would want to do that, or to use that, is for a case just like this, that if you have more than one assessment on the same day, then you wouldn't be able to get a unique image name, because you'd have the same plot, the plot 101, treatment number 1 on April 15th. That's actually going to have two different images, both fit that description. So therefore we have an option here for the column ID, so that way there is a unique this maybe is column 1, and this might be column 2. It might be column ID number 6. Who knows? But it's just a way to, if you are attaching pictures to multiple columns that have the same assessment date, then you can utilize that column ID in order to really create a unique identifier and a unique name. And then this last option here, so there's a P ahead of the 101, so that way you know it's a plot 101. That's kind of handy. You can technically take it off if you want, but then it just loses a little bit of meaning. It might be pretty clear though that that's a plot number and that's a treatment number, but sometimes maybe not. So it's kind of nice to have those identifiers in there. And you can also, typically what I would recommend is that you kind of set this once. Get it to be the system that you want, and then always use that same system. Because if you attach images one way and then suddenly you change the way you did it, you won't be able to sort as nicely. So kind of one of the nice things about this is once we attach them, then in your just in Windows you could sort, and it's pretty nice then to be able to sort with the name. It'll be kind of automatically sorted and grouped by, in this case, it'll be grouping by plot first, and then by treatment number, and then by treatment date. So if you suddenly change that system, then they're not going to sort quite as well. There is some prompting in ARM though, so if we chose these settings and then next week I tweaked my settings, when I reopen this file, ARM can actually kind of detect that you used a different system, and it can optionally rename your images to match again. So it can kind of have your back that way if you do change it later. But all right, so I think this is a nice example here. We'll just run with kind of how we have configured it. So once again, we see all of those linkages for all of our plots here. And now in that folder, we have all of the images. It actually looks like C1 and C4. So that just happened to be the identifier, even though it's column number 2 that we're visually seeing. I must have maybe inserted and then deleted some columns or something, so the true identifier is 4. And to be honest, it doesn't matter a whole lot to us, but that way we have a different file name for each of them. And if I wanted to, I could even sort by, let me give me my details here, and sort by name. This will kind of see, now you have the plot 101s, and you have the plot 102s, treatment number, date. So it's kind of a nice way that you can sort these. So even if you're not in ARM looking at the plots, you still kind of have that value of being able to see and know what those images are about. So we kind of showed how you can see that little thumbnail here. If you click on it or click on that little expand button, you can see a little bit bigger version of it. And that's pretty nice. Then if you want to visually compare between a couple plots, you can click between them and go back and forth, and you can see how they may differ. There's also a pretty nice feature, display by treatment. So if I click on treatment number 1 here and then choose that option, now when I expand them, we actually get to see all of the treatment 1s across the 5 different replicates in this column. So a really nice way to see and compare, because then if I click into 3, it's going to load all of the treatment 3s. Expand that, you can see it's plot 102, and then plot 204, plot 301. So it goes and finds all of the treatment 3s in the column. And you can visually compare across the replicates. And here it looks like I maybe didn't sort my images quite right, because it clearly isn't really the same picture for each of them, but just for demonstration purposes, it'll work just fine. So a really nice way to see on your screen and compare across the replicates how how each of those treatments had done. Finally, in the print reports, if you wanted to include a thumbnail of those pictures in your report, the one place you can do that is your assessment data summary. So there's an option here where if you want to, you could include the image. You could also include some of those other data values we had showed at the outset here. You could include the comment, the barcode, the GPS that you'd entered. Those pieces can also be included on the report. The image, it might be a little hard to do that. You can kind of choose the size for it here. But if you did want those on a report in some fashion, the assessment summary essentially spits out each of your data values grouped by treatment. And so here we can include some of that information. Probably by the time you print this on a piece of paper, I don't know how helpful some of those pictures are, but it might be nice to have, depending on the type of picture that you took, if you needed that. So that's really kind of the one place where these pictures can be intertwined with a report for some output. Of course, you always just have these images as files, so I could import them into a PowerPoint presentation or whatever I want to do with them. They haven't been sucked into the ARM system or anything like that where you can't access them outside of ARM. They're simply a link. If you wanted to do some sort of image adjusting, you could do that as well, because they're just files, and all ARM knows is that it's an image file, and it links it to that plot. And that's actually what I had done. These files were originally quite large. Each of them, they were taken with a pretty nice camera, so the file size was really big. And so I had actually just went in and compressed them down to be a smaller size. And ARM doesn't care because they're just image files. And so there's nothing you can really mess up. If you were to tweak the contents of the image, just keep it where it's at with the same name, and ARM will be happy. So. All right, well, that's really all I have as far as the functionality of attaching the images. I think once you do it once, it's really not too bad. It's pretty slick, pretty quick process. I think it can be a huge time saver, even just the renaming. We've had people that say, well, that'll save me a week at least of time of going through images and renaming them. And not to mention just the mental angst that you go through with such a tedious task, is well worth it, much less all the time you save doing that too. So it can be in trainings, this one's a good crowd pleaser. People get pretty excited just because you can just start counting on your fingers the number of days that's gonna save you if you take a lot of plot pictures. And so just to know that it's there and kind of how you would do it, I think is a good thing to get the word out, because it is a little bit hidden. Certainly, there's no blaring sign that says, "Hey, attach a picture here." You kind of got to go over in that properties panel to find that attach. But it's a nice tool. Question here: does ARM convert JPEG to PNG, or does it use the original format? So ARM itself won't do anything to the format of the picture. So that would be up to you. If you have JPEG and you'd want to convert it to a PNG, you would need to use a different software for that. So really, ARM is just going to take whatever the original format was. So you'll notice these are all PNGs, and so when it attached them, it kept it as a PNG. It does not doesn't change the format. If these were all JPEGs originally, that's what ARM would have attached. But certainly, if you do have software that can do that, that if you would prefer or typically convert your images. If the extension is going to change, I would recommend that you do that before you attach, just because that will throw off, if I took all these pings now and converted them to JPEG, then ARM isn't going to be too happy because it knows the path with the ping extension. And ARM won't automatically recognize that you've changed the extension. Just the way it thinks it's a file, it's going to think that file is gone. So in that case, if you're going to convert the actual image extension, the format of the image itself, definitely do that before you attach. But briefly, ARM won't do that for you. ARM doesn't really have any image processing tools. It's really just creating that link for you. So, but that's a really good question. Any other questions? Certainly shout them out now if you like. We wrapped up pretty quickly here. Some of our webinars, I'll look down and it's like 10 minutes to, and I'm like, oh man, I've got like 20 minutes worth of stuff. So I try to wrap up quickly, but today we cruised through it. So if you have questions, definitely holler them out. If not, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. You can look for the archive to pop up on our website soon, and you can also see some of our other upcoming webinars. We'll continue to serve these up if there's people who want to listen. So I'll just kind of hang on the line here for anyone that might have some questions, and if not, I appreciate theirs. So one question here about us attaching pictures to for a sponsor, and so that's a good one. I kind of talked about real briefly the general idea that once you're attaching these images, it doesn't work to simply grab the trial file and send it on. So you would want to include all of these image files as well with the trial. Nova was bugging me. I don't need any updates right now. And so certainly, if you wanted to, you could just grab all of these files and drop them in an email or however you send them. Pictures can get pretty big, so depending on how many you have, email suddenly might not work too well. And so some options you might have is to drop it into Dropbox. So if your sponsor wants you to take pictures, they might already be expecting that. That it's not as easy just to email me the trial back. So they might have a system. It might be worth just checking with them. But I know that's been a common one I've heard is the sponsor would set up a Dropbox folder for each cooperator that they work with. And then only you and them could see that folder, and you can drop in all of the files. So that way all of the pictures and the trial can be put there, and then it would sync back and forth, and so then you don't have to worry about the size of your email getting blocked. Or what you could do, I've heard people say, well, send me the trial file in an email, that way I can have it right away, and then drop all of the image files onto a thumb drive, and mail them to me. I've heard that done as well too. Here, real briefly, just to kind of show what happens, I'm going to save this. So all those attachments will be kind of solidified as that linkage. And then I'm going to close that. And let's just going to move all of these files. So we'll, in a way, we'll kind of pretend that I'm going to send this trial to my sponsor or somebody else, and not include the images. And one way I'm going to do this is just simply move all of these images to a different folder, so that way ARM can't find them. That'll be kind of our hack to pretend that we're on a totally different computer. So if they were to open this trial now and those images aren't on their computer, ARM's too smart. ARM will try to look for the images. So ARM outsmarted me here and actually figured out that I moved the path there. So it actually found the images here. So let me do a better job and actually get rid of those. Oh, they didn't move, that's why. I copied them instead. Let me get rid of them all. Just delete them all out so ARM cannot find them. All right. Am I in the right folder? I'm not sure how it's finding these. Not sure what I'm doing wrong here to fake it, but it's a lot smarter than I am at the moment. All right, let me just copy this and find a totally different folder maybe to open it from. Let's open it from maybe my ARM data folder. Documents. And since I copied it, it's going to give me this error that it's found this duplicate. So I'm going to say, yeah, clear out the identifying the identifiers here. And I am just mystified because it keeps finding those images and I'm not sure how. Not doing a very good job of faking this here. Somehow it just keeps finding those image files even though I thought I deleted them. So yeah, it just keeps putting them back. I'm not sure how that's happening, but pretending this is a different person's computer, what you would see instead is if it can't find this path and it can't find those images because we're on a totally different computer, then there'll be a prompt that comes up and it says that ARM cannot find these attachments, and it'll list out each one of them for each of those plots. It'll still try to keep that link there, so that way if you do go and find the images, then ARM can hook that back up. So that way the sponsor can open the study, they can see your data and see how everything's going, and they just simply wouldn't see the image yet. And then whenever that flash drive arrives in the mail, or however you get those images to them, then they just put them in that same folder with their trial, and then the next time they open it up, ARM will be able to find the image again and everything will be hooked back together. But in that scenario, at least then the sponsor still can have the data and they can start doing the number crunching, and whenever the images catch up, ARM will be sitting there waiting and happy to find those files again. So like I said, I think the biggest thing would be in that scenario is talk to your sponsor to see how they would typically do it or how they would prefer to set it up, because that is kind of the one thing with those images is that they could be very large when you're talking about however many plots you're going to take, and who knows how many different assessments, how many different images you might end up wanting to take across each of those plots. That can be size, really balloon in size. So there's some different hurdles you might see there, but Yeah, thanks for the question there. Oh, and the other piece that I mentioned briefly, but I do want to show again, is that send to. So that's kind of the other advantage if you don't have tons of pictures, or you think that you would want to include all of those pictures together in an email. The send to is really nice. The send to runs a trial validation here. So it's actually not even going to let me send this because I haven't completed my work yet, which is pretty nice as well, because I didn't even fill in my rating dates for my data. So that's another nice feature of the send to, is it'll run some of those consistency checks to make sure that I don't embarrass myself by sending this data across without even the rating dates that the sponsor asked for. So, but that send to then can automatically attach all of your attachments, which include those assessment images. You can even run reports automatically, and ARM can generate a PDF or Word output, and you just give it the report set that you would want to run. So it'll run that report, save that file, and then grab all of your attachments and your trial file, put those all together in a single folder. It can even zip up that folder together and throw that into an Outlook message. Or if you run your mail and web-based, then it can create a file that then you can link and attach in your web-based email. So again, that's that scenario where you would want to include the images in that email, which may or may not be feasible based on your size. So. All right, great questions. So I hang on the line here for a minute or two if there's any other questions. Otherwise, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. So.